Earth's diplomat stood in the center of the large silver hall, the place where representatives from dozens of star systems gathered every cycle. The hall was always bright, always filled with movement, with lights that shimmered softly on the walls. But today, despite all that brightness, the air felt heavy. The diplomat could feel it while waiting for the council members to settle. There was a message to deliver, and it was not one the council wanted to hear. The diplomat held a small data sphere. It contained everything Earth's sensors had recorded near the outer regions of council space. Strange flashes, missing signals, sudden drops in energy flow, and unexplained ship losses. All of it pointed to something unusual, something dangerous, something that did not fit any known pattern. Even Earth's scientists struggled to classify it. But one thing was clear: the danger was real, and it was coming closer. When the council chair finally signaled to begin, the diplomat stepped forward. Though the hall was huge, with rows of elevated seats circling the center platform, the diplomat did not feel overwhelmed. This wasn't the first time presenting critical findings here. Earth had delivered warnings before. Some had been right, some had been misjudged. But this time, the diplomat knew the warning was accurate. A soft hum echoed as the datasphere activated, projecting floating images above the diplomat's hand. Tiny dots representing patrol ships blinked, then vanished from the map one by one. A static line appeared, showing a rising pattern of energy spikes. The diplomat spoke slowly, clearly, making sure every word reached every corner of the hall. Something unknown had entered council space. Something powerful. Something capable of wiping out ships before they could even send distress calls. The diplomat explained everything, from the first strange reading to the most recent disappearance. Earth scientists didn't know what this anomaly was, but they understood its strength. The reactions around the room were mixed. Some delegates leaned forward, worried. Others leaned back, unimpressed. A few exchanged quiet remarks with their aides. The council chair listened with a polite but distant expression, one that revealed no opinion. The diplomat had expected this. Over the years, the council had grown confident, sometimes too confident, in their technology and numbers. When the diplomat finished, the hall remained silent for a moment. It was the kind of silence that never lasted long here. Soon, one of the council members stood up and questioned the reliability of Earth's sensors. Another suggested that maybe Earth's readings were simply the result of technical failure or natural cosmic activity. A third delegate implied that Earth might be exaggerating the threat in order to seek greater influence within the council. The diplomat listened patiently. Earth was used to this kind of reaction. Humans had joined the council later than most other civilizations, and their homeworld was not as wealthy or advanced as some of the older member planets. Many council representatives still saw Earth as a junior partner. Friendly, useful, but not central. It was easy for them to dismiss Earth's warnings. Still, the diplomats stayed calm. Emotional reactions would only weaken their message. Instead, more evidence was shown. More patterns. More missing patrol logs. More unexplained distortions that matched no known natural event. But even as these details appeared in the air for everyone to see, the same doubtful looks remained across the room. One representative stood and declared that the council's fleets were the strongest in the region. They had survived wars, cosmic storms, and hostile outsiders. Nothing had ever challenged them, so why would something new? Another added that Earth had always been cautious, sometimes overly cautious, and maybe this was just another misunderstanding. The diplomat could feel a familiar frustration rising but forced it back down. This wasn't about pride or politics. This was about keeping people safe. The diplomat reminded the council that Earth had detected the anomaly earlier because of their long-range sensors, not because they were trying to sound alarms. The message was simple: prepare, investigate, be careful, but the council wasn't ready to accept it. Their confidence in their fleets ran deep, built over centuries of peace and routine patrols. They believed the strength of their ships alone could handle anything that might appear. Listening to Earth's warning felt unnecessary to them. After several more questions and disagreements, the council chair finally spoke. The chair thanked Earth for the report, but concluded that the council did not see enough proof to take strong action. They would monitor the situation, but no emergency measures would be approved. No evacuations. No change in patrol strategy. No additional research teams. Just observation that the diplomat felt the weight of that decision. Observation was not enough. The anomaly was already moving. Waiting could cost lives, but arguing further would not help. The council had spoken. For now, and so the diplomat lowered the datasphere and bowed respectfully, even though disappointment pressed heavily on their chest. They had done everything possible within the rules of the council. The rest was out of their hands, as the hall dismissed. A few younger officers approached quietly, asking for copies of Earth's findings. They looked concerned, not arrogant like the senior members. The diplomat gave the data to them without hesitation. Even if the council didn't act, someone had to pay attention. Someone had to prepare. Outside the hall, the diplomat stepped into the long corridor lined with tall glass panels showing views of space. The stars shined calmly, distant and peaceful. But the diplomat knew that calmness was an illusion. Somewhere out there, the anomaly pulsed with unknown power, moving slowly but steadily toward inhabited space. The diplomat paused, placing a hand gently on the glass. Humans had always been alert to danger. It came from history, from centuries of surviving things bigger and stronger than themselves. Maybe that was why Earth noticed changes before others. Maybe that was why the warning had come from them first. But even with all that awareness, the diplomat knew Earth alone could not stop whatever was coming. The council had resources, ships, and influence that Earth didn't. If only they had listened. As the diplomat walked away from the window, memories of past council meetings surfaced. Years ago, Earth had warned about a smaller threat, a drifting field of unstable particles. The council had ignored that too, until it damaged a trade route. Only after the incident did they admit Earth had been correct. The diplomat wondered if something similar would happen again, only on a much larger scale. A scale the council might not be able to recover from. Later that night, back at Earth's embassy, the diplomat reviewed the data again. Every reading pointed to the same conclusion. The anomaly was not random. It behaved like something searching, something pushing forward with intention. But what that intention was remained unknown. Earth scientists sent updates regularly, and the newest report predicted increased activity soon. If the council continued to delay, they would not have time to prepare. The diplomat sent a message to Earth, summarizing the council's decision. It was a short message, but it carried the weight of fear and responsibility. Still, the diplomat refused to give up hope. Humans were stubborn by nature. Even if the council didn't act yet, Earth would continue gathering data. Earth would continue trying to understand the anomaly. And Earth would continue warning others. Even if those warnings were ignored. The next morning, the diplomat returned to the council building, hoping someone might have reconsidered overnight. But nothing had changed. Everyone continued with their regular tasks, confident the galaxy was stable, confident their fleets were safe. The diplomat walked through the halls and realized how difficult it was to convince people who had never faced sudden danger. As the day progressed, more meetings took place, none of them related to the anomaly. Trade disputes, transport regulations, cultural agreements, everything felt small compared to what was coming. The diplomat attended them quietly, answering questions when needed, but the mind kept drifting back to the vanished patrol ships. By the time the day ended, the diplomat had spoken to several representatives privately. A few listened. A few doubted. A few didn't care. But none had the authority to change the council's overall decision. And so the diplomat returned home again, carrying the same concern and the same unanswered questions. The stars outside the window twinkled peacefully, but inside the diplomat's heart, there was no peace. The diplomat knew the council would not accept the truth until something undeniable happened. Humans always hoped to prevent disaster, but the galaxy often learned lessons only after suffering them. The diplomat could only hope that whatever happened next would not come too fast, and that when the council finally realized the danger, it wouldn't be too late. The warning had been given. Now the diplomat could only wait. After the diplomat returned to Earth's embassy, the feeling of frustration didn't leave. Days passed, but nothing seemed to change in the council. The council members carried on with their routines, discussing trade agreements, colony expansions, or debates over minor policy changes. Life for them remained the same, peaceful and predictable. For the diplomat, it felt impossible to accept. The anomaly Earth had detected was moving closer, growing stronger. And yet the council treated it as if it were nothing more than a minor curiosity. Earth scientists continued monitoring the anomaly, sending frequent updates. They discovered small changes in its movement, patterns that hinted at intelligence or purpose. But when the diplomat forwarded this data to the council, it was mostly ignored. Some members skimmed the reports. Some delegated them to assistants. A few glanced at the readings with interest, but dismissed them as inconclusive. There were whispers in the hallways, suggesting Earth might be overreacting once again. The diplomat could hear these comments, and yet nothing changed. Pride had blinded them, and no amount of evidence seemed enough. At Earth's embassy, the diplomat often stayed late into the night, reviewing the reports, comparing past anomalies, and trying to predict what could happen next. The feeling of isolation was constant. Humans were not the only ones worried, but they were the only ones taking action. The council had resources that dwarfed Earth's, but those resources went unused because pride and overconfidence prevented action. Even junior council officers, who sometimes quietly examined Earth's data, could not convince their superiors to respond. The diplomat realized that history often repeated itself. Empires and councils tended to act only after disaster struck. Warnings were rarely heeded in advance, no matter how serious. Meanwhile, life across council space went on. Fleets patrolled as usual, civilian ships traveled their routes, and trade continued uninterrupted. The diplomats watched with growing anxiety as news came in about strange energy surges near the edge of council territory. A few ships had already disappeared, vanishing without a trace. Official reports described these events as minor incidents or technical malfunctions. The diplomat knew better. Each loss, each disturbance, was a sign that something far larger and more dangerous was approaching. Yet, to the council, these were nothing more than blips on a radar, easily ignored or forgotten. The diplomat met privately with a few junior officers who were sympathetic to Earth's warnings. They gathered in small rooms away from the main hall, discussing the anomalies and analyzing patterns together. These officers were curious, intelligent, and willing to question the council's assumptions. They asked questions like, "What if it's moving faster than we think?" Or, "What if the anomaly can target ships directly?" The diplomat answered as best as possible, showing the calculations and data projections. But even these discussions could not reach the decision-makers. The council's leadership remained distant, confident in their fleets and their experience. Sometimes the diplomat would take walks in the observation decks of the embassy, staring out at the distant stars. From this vantage point, the stars seemed calm and eternal, but the anomaly did not appear among them yet. That made it all the more dangerous. Humans had always been aware that danger often hid in silence, and the diplomat knew that the anomaly would strike without warning. The Council's pride made them blind to that reality, and it weighed heavily on the Diplomat's mind. As the anomaly continued to approach, more evidence arrived from Earth's long-range sensors. Fluctuations in energy readings suggested it had the power to disrupt ships instantly. Minor fleets sent to investigate never returned. And yet, in council meetings, the reports were met with casual remarks, polite nods, or outright dismissal. Some senior members even suggested that Earth was trying to gain influence by stirring panic. The Diplomat could hardly contain the frustration. It was not fear that motivated Earth's warnings. It was responsibility, duty, and the desire to prevent catastrophe. But the Council seemed unable or unwilling to understand that, day after day, the Diplomat presented updates, new calculations, and detailed predictions. The anomaly seemed to be following a pattern, one that could be studied and potentially countered. Yet the Council's attitude remained unchanged. Pride was a powerful barrier. No one wanted to admit that a small world like Earth could detect something their advanced fleets had overlooked. No one wanted to accept that their strength was not enough. The Diplomat had seen this kind of arrogance before, not only in space politics, but in human history as well. It was easy to ignore a warning when nothing immediate seemed wrong. That ignorance was dangerous. Despite the obstacles, the Diplomat continued to work tirelessly. Teams of scientists on Earth shared new findings, tested models, and even ran simulations predicting how the anomaly might behave. Small protective measures were suggested, ways fleets could adapt if needed. Yet, when these measures were presented to the Council, they were often postponed or dismissed. Some members claimed resources were needed elsewhere. Others said the anomaly was too uncertain to justify immediate action. The Diplomat understood the reasoning, but it seemed like a refusal to act at any cost. Even when the risk was high, the Diplomat also noticed how human emotions affected the situation. Council members who ignored the warnings seemed confident, even smug. They joked quietly with colleagues, exchanged glances, and often ridiculed Earth's caution. The Diplomat saw the effect this had on junior officers and scientists, many of whom wanted to act but felt powerless. Pride and fear of embarrassment outweighed concern for safety. The Diplomat had to remind themselves that patience, persistence, and careful presentation were the only tools they had to influence the Council. Anger or confrontation would accomplish nothing. Outside the Council halls, minor fleets continued to patrol border regions. Ships traveled through space carrying cargo, scientific teams, and personnel. Occasionally, messages came in describing unexpected energy fluctuations, small blackouts, or sensor interference. These were signs of the anomaly, yet the reports were filed away as minor technical problems. Fleet commanders, relying on decades of experience, assumed these were accidents, mistakes, or natural phenomena. The Diplomat knew better. Each small event was a warning, a clue to the anomaly's strength and behavior. Ignoring them would be costly. Even with so many obstacles, there were moments of hope. The junior officers who studied Earth's data carefully asked thoughtful questions, suggested experiments, and sometimes found new patterns. Earth's own scientists never gave up, analyzing every piece of information to understand the threat. The Diplomat held on to these moments, small signs that preparation was possible if someone finally listened. These were the seeds of potential action, waiting for the Council to recognize their importance. In private meetings, the Diplomat sometimes vented frustrations, but always with the same purpose: to keep people safe. Humanity's history had shown that warnings often went unheard until disaster arrived. The Diplomat was determined not to let history repeat itself if possible. Every report, every calculation, every projection was a reminder that patience, persistence, and careful observation could still save countless lives, even if pride delayed action. As weeks went by, the anomaly's approach became more visible in Earth's data. It was growing faster, moving closer to inhabited space. Each day without Council action increased the risk of loss. The Diplomat kept sending updates, each one more urgent than the last. Each time, the Council acknowledged receipt, promised to monitor, and then did nothing. The Diplomat began to understand that their role was not only to warn, but also to document and prepare. Even if the Council refused to act, Earth would have to be ready. At the embassy. The Diplomat spent late nights reviewing new reports, recalculating projections, and consulting with Earth's scientific teams. The data suggested that if fleets remained in their current positions without adaptation, losses would be catastrophic. Humans had faced threats before, on their planet and in minor space encounters, and survived through caution and preparation. But this was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The Council's pride could cost not just their fleets, but countless lives across many worlds. The Diplomat also tried to reach individual Council members privately, hoping to sway opinion slowly. Some listened and appreciated the detailed analysis. Some nodded politely but took no action. A few dismissed it entirely. The Diplomat realized that no single argument could overcome collective arrogance. It would take undeniable evidence to shift the Council's stance. Until then, Earth would continue monitoring, preparing, and warning. That was all they could do. Despite the frustration, the Diplomat never lost composure. Anger, panic, or despair would only harm communication. Patience and persistence were the tools of diplomacy. Each day, the Diplomat reviewed, explained, and presented evidence calmly. It was not easy, and it required every ounce of focus. Humans understood that disasters rarely arrived with warning. Sometimes they came slowly, building momentum until there was no turning back. The Diplomat hoped this anomaly would allow time, but the signs were not encouraging. Even in the quiet moments, the Diplomat thought about what would happen if the Council continued to ignore the warnings. Civilizations could be unprepared. The first reports of missing fleets arrived quietly at first. Small patrol ships sent to investigate the outer edges of Council space had vanished without warning. No distress signals. No debris, just silence. The Diplomat received the data late at night, staring at the flickering displays in the embassy's monitoring room. Every reading, every sensor log, confirmed the earlier warnings. The anomaly was no longer a distant possibility. It was real, moving, and unstoppable in its current form. The Diplomat could see the pattern immediately. The disappearing patrols were following a predictable path. Energy spikes were detected moments before each loss. Ships simply ceased to exist, leaving nothing but empty coordinates behind. It was unlike anything the Council had faced before. Earth scientists had never observed this kind of behavior in natural space phenomena, and even the most experienced military strategists struggled to explain it. Yet the Council still hesitated, still did not act. Across the galaxy, fleets continued to patrol with the same routines, unaware of the danger creeping closer. The officers commanding these ships were confident in their training and the technology at their disposal. Shields, energy fields, and emergency protocols were all in place. They had faced storms, minor anomalies, and even hostile encounters before. To them, this anomaly seemed like just another mystery, another puzzle to be solved. But they were wrong. It was not a puzzle. It was a threat beyond comprehension, one that did not wait for investigation or negotiation. The Diplomat spent long hours preparing new reports, recalculating predictions, and sending urgent updates to the Council. Every message included the same warning: the anomaly could destroy fleets faster than anyone could react. The data suggested that even large defensive groups could be wiped out in seconds if unprepared. The Diplomat's words were precise, calm, and clear, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Still, the Council remained cautious. not in the sense of being careful, but in the sense of refusing to believe anything that challenged their confidence. At the embassy, the diplomat worked with a small team of junior officers who understood the urgency. They stayed up through long nights, simulating scenarios based on the latest readings. What would happen if fleets remained in their current positions? What would happen if the anomaly reached the first cluster of inhabited systems? Each simulation ended with the same result: devastating losses. These exercises were chilling, but they were necessary. Humans had always prepared for worst-case scenarios. Unlike the Council, they could not afford to wait until disaster struck. Meanwhile, in Council meetings, discussions continued as though nothing serious was happening. Trade disputes, political debates, and cultural disagreements filled the halls. Some senior members were beginning to feel nervous, sensing that Earth's warnings might be accurate. Yet even they hesitated to propose bold action. No one wanted to admit that their fleets could be defeated so easily. Pride, experience, and reputation held them back. They continued to debate, hoping for clarity, but clarity had already arrived. The anomaly was real. The losses were real. And time was running out. When the first large defensive fleet was sent to investigate, Earth's diplomat watched closely from the embassy's observation deck. The fleet was impressive, one of the largest ever assembled by the Council. Massive ships bristling with weapons, shields humming with energy, engines ready to maneuver. The Council believed that sheer strength would allow them to face the unknown and emerge victorious. The diplomat's heart sank. Humans had studied the anomaly's behavior carefully, and they knew strength alone would not matter. This fleet was walking into a trap. They could not even see Dot as the fleet crossed the border into the anomaly's path. Sensors began to pick up unusual energy readings. Signals bounced strangely. Communications became intermittent, and instruments showed distortions that no one could explain. The officers on the fleet were puzzled but not alarmed. They assumed it was a minor interference, perhaps a natural phenomenon they had not encountered before. They had no idea that the anomaly was observing them, adapting, and ready to act out from the embassy. The diplomat's team monitored every signal. They analyzed fluctuations in the anomaly's energy fields, watching the fleet's movements with growing concern. Moments before the first attack, patterns became clear. The anomaly's bursts of energy were perfectly timed. The first wave of ships would be struck simultaneously. No chance for escape. No chance for repair. No warning. In the simulation room, the diplomat reviewed the calculations one last time, knowing that if the Council did not act immediately, nothing could prevent disaster. Then it happened. The first fleet reached the anomaly's location, and sensors recorded an instantaneous collapse of energy fields. Shields flickered, weapon systems went offline, and communication lines vanished in a heartbeat. The Council had never seen anything like it. Officers on other ships watched in horror as their comrades disappeared in seconds. The diplomatic team at the embassy could only watch silently, unable to intervene, unable to warn in time. The anomaly had struck, and the Council's overconfidence had made them vulnerable. After the destruction, the Council was forced to confront reality. What had been theoretical was now undeniable. The anomaly was not a minor disturbance. It was a force capable of destroying massive fleets almost instantly. Panic began to spread in the Council halls. Officers who had previously dismissed Earth's warnings now sought the diplomat's advice urgently. For weeks, their pride had blinded them, but the destruction had changed everything. Suddenly, Earth's voice was not only respected, it was essential. The diplomat stayed calm amidst the chaos, delivering advice clearly and efficiently. "We must analyze the anomaly's patterns," the diplomat said. "We must adapt our fleet's positions and shield systems. Evacuation protocols need to begin immediately. We cannot rely on strength alone." Council members listened intently, their earlier arrogance replaced by fear and urgency. The diplomat had always known this day might come, but it was still painful to witness the losses that made it inevitable. Across Council space, survivors of the destroyed fleets scrambled to regroup. Officers who had been confident in their ship's invincibility now faced the frightening truth. The anomaly could strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. Plans hastily drawn on communication panels replaced long-standing protocols. Emergency evacuation routes were prepared. Teams worked tirelessly to reinforce weaker ships and protect vital systems. Every action was reactive, every decision made under pressure. The diplomat watched these efforts with a mix of relief and concern, knowing that more losses were likely if preparation was incomplete. Meanwhile, Earth scientists analyzed the anomaly's energy bursts in real time. Patterns emerged. It moved with purpose, avoided wasted effort, and targeted ships in precise sequences. The diplomat relayed these observations to the Council, emphasizing the need for careful monitoring and predictive planning. For the first time, Council members understood that this was not just a random event. It was an intelligent, unstoppable force. And ignoring the warning had been a mistake they could not afford to repeat. In the embassy, the diplomat spent long hours coordinating with surviving fleet commanders. Strategies were discussed, simulated, and revised constantly. Human ingenuity played a central role, combining observation, prediction, and quick decision-making. Unlike the Council, Earth could operate flexibly, responding to patterns and adapting in real time. Every piece of data mattered. Every decision could save lives. The diplomat knew that if the Council continued to rely on old assumptions, more fleets would be lost. Despite the devastation, moments of hope appeared. Survivors learned quickly, sharing observations and experience. Junior officers began to trust Earth's advice, relying on data rather than tradition. Small fleets successfully avoided the anomaly, using strategies suggested by the diplomat and Earth scientists. Each success was a reminder that preparation and observation could still make a difference. Humanity's persistence, patience, and careful study were now proving essential to the survival of many. By the end of the first strike, the Council had no choice but to listen. Earth's warnings were no longer theoretical. The reality of the anomaly had been demonstrated in the most dramatic and terrifying way possible. The diplomat continued to provide guidance, analyzing patterns, sharing calculations, and helping plan the next moves. Every minute counted. Every decision could prevent further destruction. As the dust settled, the diplomat reflected on the events. Weeks of warnings, data reports, and careful analysis had finally been recognized, but at a cost. Fleets had been lost, lives endangered, and the Council's confidence shattered. The lesson was clear. Ignoring warnings, dismissing careful observation, and overestimating strength could be fatal. Humans had seen it coming and tried to prevent it, but the Council's pride had delayed action until disaster forced them to listen. The diplomat knew that the coming days would be even more challenging. Evacuations, defensive strategies, and protective measures would have to be coordinated across multiple systems. The anomaly had proven it could destroy fleets instantly, and any miscalculation now could be catastrophic. Still, there was determination. Humans had shown that careful observation, persistence, and quick adaptation could make a difference. Even I. After the first fleet was destroyed, the Council could no longer ignore the truth. Panic replaced confidence in their chambers. Senior members who had once dismissed Earth's warnings were now desperate, seeking advice from the very diplomats they had previously ignored. Earth's lead diplomat became the focal point of every discussion, every emergency meeting, every planning session. The same calm, steady figure who had been dismissed weeks ago was now essential. The diplomat arrived at the Council building early, before most members had even settled. The halls that had once echoed with confident chatter now carried a tense, nervous silence. Officers and aides hurried past, carrying reports, calculations, and updated fleet positions. Emergency meetings had been scheduled one after another, but time was running out. The anomaly was moving faster than anyone had anticipated, and another strike could happen at any moment. The Diplomat began presenting the latest analysis. Earth scientists had continued monitoring the anomaly, discovering more patterns in its movement. Unlike the Council's fleets, which relied on brute strength and rigid protocols, humans had been studying the anomaly's behavior in detail. They had identified cycles, energy fluctuations, and possible weak points. The Diplomat explained all of this carefully, using visual projections to show what the anomaly had done to the First Fleet and what it might do next. Council members leaned forward, some in disbelief, some in anxiety. Questions poured in technical, tactical, and strategic. The Diplomat answered them all patiently. Humans had long experience with careful observation, precise calculations, and predicting outcomes based on incomplete data. Every answer, every explanation, was backed by numbers and evidence, not pride or assumptions. Still, it was not easy. The Council had been confident for centuries, believing their fleets were unbeatable. Many could not quickly accept that their assumptions were wrong. Some even suggested risky maneuvers, arguing that sheer force could still destroy the anomaly. The Diplomat shook their head gently. Strength alone would not work. The anomaly does not respond like other threats, the Diplomat said. It adapts. It strikes instantly. Brute force is not enough. We must understand it, predict it, and respond carefully. That is the only way to survive. The Diplomat worked with teams of junior officers and scientists to develop a plan. It included repositioning fleets, creating safe corridors for evacuation, and reinforcing shields in vulnerable areas. These measures required coordination across multiple star systems, careful timing, and precise calculations. Every delay could cost lives. Unlike the Council's usual methods, which were slow and bureaucratic, Earth's approach was fast, adaptive, and focused on saving people. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, fleet commanders nervously implemented the new strategies. Many were skeptical at first, unwilling to trust advice from a world they had considered minor. But after witnessing the destruction of the First Fleet, hesitation turned into compliance. The Diplomat's guidance was now seen not as optional, but as essential. Emergency drills, real-time monitoring, and continuous updates became the new normal. Humanity's detailed analysis and careful planning were the best hope for survival. The Diplomat also emphasized communication. Coordination between fleets, outposts, and Council stations was critical. The anomaly did not allow mistakes, and every lost signal could result in disaster. Humans had developed systems that allowed information to flow instantly and accurately, bypassing the slow channels the Council had relied on for decades. For the first time, the Council saw the value of methodical, human-centered problem-solving. As the days passed, the Diplomat worked tirelessly, reviewing new data, adjusting projections, and guiding Council leaders. The anomaly's energy patterns were becoming more predictable, but only just enough to allow preparation. Every cycle mattered. The Diplomat reminded the Council that hesitation could mean losing entire fleets again. They showed simulations, charts, and projections, demonstrating what could happen if action was delayed even slightly. Junior officers began to trust Earth's approach. They stayed in the monitoring rooms for long hours, running calculations and sharing updates with fleet commanders. Their confidence grew as strategies were tested and small adjustments prevented minor losses. The Diplomat watched these efforts with quiet satisfaction. Humans had long believed in preparation, observation, and learning from experience. Now those principles were saving lives. Despite the progress, tension remained high. Council members who had dismissed Earth's warnings still struggled to adjust. Some made rash suggestions, arguing for aggressive attacks. Others questioned the validity of human data, even in the face of clear evidence. The diplomat remained patient, calmly explaining every detail, demonstrating every prediction with supporting data. It was exhausting work, but essential. The lives of thousands depended on clarity, not pride. Communication with fleets continued nonstop. Updates from the edge of Council space arrived frequently, showing the anomaly's current location and energy fluctuations. Commanders reported minor disruptions, odd energy readings, and strange behavior. Earth's team analyzed every message instantly, providing instructions for immediate action. Ships were redirected, shields reinforced, and emergency protocols activated. Each adjustment saved lives. The diplomat also worked to manage the Council's fears. Leaders were nervous, frustrated, and exhausted. They were unaccustomed to relying so heavily on another world's guidance. But the diplomat remained calm and steady, showing them that careful planning and observation could prevent disaster. Human persistence, patience, and attention to detail became the anchor in the chaos. As another cycle of the anomaly approached, the diplomat coordinated a massive operation. Fleets were positioned carefully, evacuation routes established, and communication links optimized. Every possible weakness was addressed, and every prediction calculated. For the first time, Council officers witnessed what human strategy could accomplish. They realized that while their fleets were strong, careful observation and preparation could make the difference between survival and annihilation. When the anomaly moved closer, initial panic arose among fleet commanders. Energy distortions, communications interference, and unusual readings created fear and confusion. But the diplomat's guidance held everything together. Orders were precise, timing was exact, and actions were coordinated. The anomaly struck, but this time fleets were ready. Losses occurred, but they were minimal compared to what could have happened. Humans had helped the Council adapt in time. After the encounter, the Council finally recognized Earth's role. Leaders who had once ignored warnings now praised the diplomat's clear, methodical guidance. Fleet commanders thanked the human teams for their precise instructions. The diplomat remained modest, emphasizing that the success was the result of preparation, observation, and cooperation, not personal glory. Despite this success, the diplomat warned that the anomaly was not defeated. It remained a powerful, unpredictable force. Continued vigilance, constant monitoring, and rapid adaptation were necessary to prevent further destruction. Council members listened carefully, understanding that survival now depended on humans' methods, persistence, and knowledge. In private moments, the diplomat reflected on the journey so far. Weeks of warnings, frustration, and ignored messages had finally led to action, but only after the first fleet was destroyed. It was a harsh lesson in the consequences of pride, arrogance, and delay. Yet it was also proof of the power of careful planning, observation, and persistence. Humans had saved countless lives, not with brute strength, but with patience, intelligence, and determination. The diplomat continued to coordinate Earth's teams and Council fleets tirelessly. Every message, every projection, and every adjustment mattered. The anomaly was still moving, still dangerous, but humanity's preparation gave the galaxy a fighting chance. For the first time, the Council truly understood the value of listening, learning, and adapting. By the end of this cycle, a new reality had emerged. Earth was no longer a minor player, quietly offering advice. It had become essential. Humans had shown that careful observation, detailed planning, and patience could prevent disaster, even when others refused to act. The Council had learned a critical lesson. Pride and overconfidence could lead to destruction, but cooperation and intelligence could save lives. The diplomat looked out at the stars, calm but vigilant. The anomaly was still approaching, but this time Humanity's careful work had created a chance to survive. And in that calm, there was hope, a hope born from persistence, preparation, and the quiet determination to act when others would not. The morning began quietly, with the usual hum of activity in the council halls. Officers reviewed fleet positions, analysts studied the latest sensor reports, and diplomats prepared for another day of briefings. For a moment, there was a false sense of calm. Humans had guided the council fleets through the first encounter, and minor losses had been minimized. Some officers even began to believe that preparation and strategy could be enough to stop the anomaly completely. But the diplomat knew better. The anomaly was still out there, powerful, unpredictable, and moving faster than anyone realized. The diplomat arrived early at the council building, ready to coordinate the next phase of operations. Plans had been drawn, simulations run, and fleet movements carefully adjusted based on Earth's predictions. Every commander had been briefed on the patterns the anomaly displayed, on the energy fluctuations, and on the precise timing needed to avoid destruction. Still, a sense of tension hung in the air. Everyone knew that even a small mistake could be catastrophic. Reports began arriving from the border systems. Small patrols that had been sent out to test safe corridors returned with strange readings. Energy pulses stronger than predicted disrupted sensors and communication signals. Officers aboard these ships described eerie moments of silence, as if the anomaly were observing, calculating, and testing them. Each report increased the anxiety in the council chambers. The anomaly had already demonstrated the ability to annihilate a fleet in seconds, and no one knew if the current defensive measures would be enough. The diplomat worked tirelessly, coordinating instructions to fleet commanders, relaying information from Earth scientists, and adjusting strategies in real time. Every decision mattered. Evacuation routes were refined, shield frequencies calibrated, and fleet positions shifted constantly. Despite the apparent chaos, humans relied on methodical observation and quick analysis. The diplomat reminded the council that while speed and power were important, patience and precision could prevent catastrophe. As the anomaly moved closer, fleet commanders reported increasing interference. Energy distortions caused weapon systems to malfunction temporarily, shields flickered, and sensors gave false readings. Officers felt fear creeping in. They were trained for battle, but nothing in their experience prepared them for this. The anomaly did not act like a normal enemy. It did not communicate. It did not negotiate. It did not show weakness. It simply existed, moving with unstoppable force. The diplomat's voice became the calm center of the storm. Every instruction was delivered clearly and calmly, even as panic rose around the room. Humans' ability to remain focused under pressure proved essential. The council, who had once ignored warnings, now relied entirely on Earth's guidance. The diplomat explained how to maneuver fleets in real time, how to adjust shields to counter sudden energy spikes, and how to maintain communication even under severe interference. Every suggestion was precise, every calculation verified, every move crucial. And then it happened. The anomaly struck. It appeared suddenly, as if materializing from nowhere, a vast wave of destructive energy sweeping across the frontier. Fleets that had not been repositioned in time were obliterated instantly. Massive ships disintegrated, engines failing, shields collapsing, communication lines severed in a heartbeat. Officers who had relied on speed and firepower found themselves powerless. For the first time, the true scale of the anomaly's power became undeniable. The diplomat monitored the destruction from the embassy, working nonstop to coordinate surviving fleets. Panic rippled through the council halls as officers watched entire formations vanish in seconds. Orders were shouted, signals sent, but the anomaly's movement was too fast, too precise, too overwhelming. The first wave of destruction was devastating, a clear reminder of what had been ignored for so long. Pride had delayed action, and now the consequences were visible for everyone to see. Survivors of the destroyed fleets scrambled to regroup. Some ships were intact, but their crews were shaken, unsure how to respond. Communication networks were overloaded with distress calls, data from destroyed vessels, and reports of energy anomalies. Humans worked tirelessly to interpret the incoming information, providing immediate instructions to save what could be saved. Fleet commanders followed the Diplomats' guidance, repositioning ships, activating emergency shields, and retreating along the safest paths. In the council halls, silence replaced the usual chatter. Leaders who had once dismissed Earth's warnings now sat in stunned disbelief. Screens displayed wreckage fields, the remnants of ships that had once been the pride of their fleets. The destruction was total and immediate. Even the most powerful vessels had been eliminated without warning, without resistance. The lesson was clear. Ignoring careful observation and relying solely on confidence had led to disaster. Amidst the chaos, humans continued their work. Analysts recalculated patterns, projecting the anomaly's next moves, and feeding instructions to surviving fleets. Evacuations were coordinated across multiple star systems. Ships carrying civilians and resources were guided along the safest routes, avoiding regions of high-energy interference. Every decision saved lives. The Diplomats' calm leadership became the anchor in a situation where panic could have caused further losses. The Council began to acknowledge the magnitude of the failure. What had been theoretical was now undeniable. The anomaly could destroy fleets in seconds, and the galaxy's survival depended on quick adaptation and careful planning. Humility replaced arrogance. Officers who had once scoffed at Earth's warnings now asked for constant updates, detailed calculations, and step-by-step instructions. The Diplomat provided guidance tirelessly, ensuring that every move was coordinated and every fleet could respond effectively. Despite the devastation, there were small successes. Fleets that had been repositioned according to Earth's calculations avoided complete destruction. Ships that followed the emergency protocols survived, allowing officers to regroup and continue defending vital regions. Each survival reinforced the value of careful planning, observation, and human persistence. The Council finally saw that strength alone could not protect them. Intelligence, preparation, and adaptation were equally essential. As the day progressed, the full scale of the disaster became evident. Losses were extensive, but the coordinated efforts of humans and surviving officers had prevented an even greater catastrophe. Systems that might have been lost entirely were preserved. The Diplomat continued to relay instructions, updating calculations in real time and guiding the remaining fleets. Humans' methodical approach, their ability to remain focused under pressure, had turned what could have been total annihilation into a manageable crisis. In the aftermath, the Council convened in emergency sessions. Leaders admitted that pride and overconfidence had caused delays, and that ignoring Earth's warnings had been a grave mistake. The Diplomat remained modest, emphasizing that the success achieved so far was due to preparation, observation, and cooperation. The lesson was clear: patience, persistence, and intelligence could save lives even when disasters seemed unstoppable. Across the galaxy, survivors of the destroyed fleets worked together, sharing observations, repairing ships, and following Earth's guidance. Evacuations continued smoothly, communications remained stable, and protective measures were applied to vulnerable systems. Humanity's persistence had become the backbone of survival. The Council had finally learned the value of listening, learning, and acting in time. As night fell, the Diplomat looked out at the stars, reflecting on the day's events. The anomaly remained a dangerous, unpredictable force, but preparation and human ingenuity had prevented complete disaster. The lessons were hard-earned. Ignoring warnings, underestimating threats, and relying solely on strength could have destroyed countless lives. Yet through careful planning, persistence, and calm leadership, the galaxy had been given a second chance. Even in the chaos and destruction, there was hope. Humans had shown that observation, calculation, and adaptation could overcome forces far beyond ordinary comprehension. The anomaly was still approaching, but now fleets were prepared, systems were fortified, and coordination ensured that survival was possible. The diplomat knew that the next phase would be challenging, but humanity's vigilance and careful work had created the opportunity to survive where others might have failed. The day ended with cautious relief. The anomaly had demonstrated its power. The Council had realized the consequences of ignoring Earth's warnings, and surviving fleets had learned to trust human guidance. It was a turning point, a moment when pride had been replaced by humility, and panic had been replaced by strategy. The diplomat knew that the coming days would still be dangerous, but preparation, observation, and human persistence offered the only path forward. The galaxy had faced annihilation in seconds, and the price of ignoring warnings had been made painfully clear. Yet humanity's steady, careful approach had prevented total catastrophe. The diplomat continued to coordinate every move, every calculation, every instruction, knowing that vigilance, patience, and determination were the only tools that could save lives against an unknown, unstoppable force. The anomaly had passed the worst of its destruction, but it still hovered in Council space, a silent, unstoppable force. The surviving fleets regrouped, damaged ships limping back to safe zones, while evacuations continued across the outer systems. The diplomat worked tirelessly, coordinating every move, relaying instructions from Earth's scientists, and advising fleet commanders in real time. Every decision mattered. The galaxy had already learned the price of inaction, and no one wanted to repeat those mistakes. Council members who had once dismissed Earth's warnings were now fully reliant on the diplomat's guidance. They had watched fleets vanish in seconds, systems endangered, and lives threatened. Pride and confidence had been replaced by humility and urgency. Every meeting was filled with questions, calculations, and scenarios. The diplomat remained calm, answering each question carefully, showing every calculation, explaining every prediction. The message was clear. Survival depended on preparation, observation, and careful coordination. Across the galaxy, humans and council officers worked together in a way that had never happened before. Fleet commanders followed detailed instructions, moving ships along precise paths, maintaining shields at optimal frequencies, and coordinating with evacuation vessels. Analysts monitored the anomaly's energy patterns constantly, adjusting strategies as the anomaly shifted its position. What had once been fear and confusion became action and order. Humanity's methodical approach had created a structure in chaos, giving hope where previously there had been only panic. The diplomat also emphasized the importance of communication. Even small disruptions could result in disaster. Humans had designed systems to maintain coordination across vast distances, using instant updates, predictive modeling, and adaptive routing. These systems allowed surviving fleets to adjust in real time, avoiding areas of high energy concentration and preventing further losses. The diplomat reminded council leaders that intelligence and patience could compensate for lost ships, but only if action was coordinated and timely. As the anomaly moved further, scientists began noticing subtle changes. It appeared to be adapting, changing its movement patterns slightly, as if testing the defenses. Humans observed these changes carefully, projecting potential paths and advising fleet commanders on the safest maneuvers. The Council, now fully aware of the danger, implemented the recommendations without hesitation. Fleet commanders who had once doubted Earth's advice now followed it precisely, adjusting routes, reinforcing shields, and coordinating defensive measures. Even with these measures, tension remained high. Officers knew that any mistake could be fatal. Every ship, every system, every decision mattered. The Diplomat remained the calm center, providing updates, recalculating predictions, and coordinating across multiple star systems simultaneously. Humans had long experience with preparation, observation, and careful decision-making. Now, those qualities were essential not only for survival, but for preserving hope across the galaxy. Evacuations continued smoothly, with civilians and vital resources being transported out of danger zones. Ships moved along carefully monitored corridors, avoiding areas of high-energy interference. Humans' attention to detail, foresight, and coordination ensured that even in the midst of chaos, lives were protected. Council members began to realize the value of preparation over pride, observation over assumption, and action guided by knowledge over blind confidence. The anomaly's energy pulses were recorded in real time, revealing patterns that had not been visible during the first encounters. Scientists studied the data, noting cycles, intensity fluctuations, and areas of temporary weakness. Humans advised on how to exploit these patterns, giving fleets the opportunity to move safely through previously dangerous regions. Fleet commanders followed the recommendations carefully, trusting the precise calculations and detailed analysis provided by Earth's team. The Diplomat also worked to maintain morale. Officers and crews who had survived the first wave of destruction were shaken and exhausted. Fear lingered, but humans provided structure and guidance. Every instruction, every coordinated movement reminded them that survival was possible. Confidence began to return, built not on pride or overestimation of strength, but on careful observation, preparation, and teamwork. The Diplomat reminded everyone that even in the face of overwhelming force, knowledge and persistence could make a difference. Over time, the anomaly began to move away from the heavily populated regions of Council space. Fleet commanders, following humans' guidance, had successfully created safe passages, and evacuation efforts were nearly complete. Systems that might have been lost were preserved, and the remaining fleets maintained vigilance, ready to respond if the anomaly shifted again. Humanity's careful planning had created a buffer, a structure that allowed survival even in the presence of an unknown and unstoppable force. Council leaders, who had once dismissed Earth's warnings, now fully acknowledged the Diplomat's role. Their attitude shifted from arrogance to respect. Meetings that had been filled with doubt and debate were now focused on strategy, observation, and cooperation. Earth's methods, patience, detailed analysis, adaptive planning had proven essential. The lesson was clear. Ignoring careful observation and overestimating strength could lead to disaster, but acting with intelligence, persistence, and preparation could save countless lives. In the aftermath, the surviving officers and scientists reflected on what had happened. The destruction had been severe, but not total. Every lost fleet, every damaged system, had reinforced the importance of preparation, observation, and teamwork. Humans had shown that intelligence and calm decision-making could overcome forces far beyond ordinary comprehension. Even the Council, proud and experienced, had learned that survival depended on cooperation, humility, and careful action. The Diplomat continued coordinating final measures, ensuring that evacuation routes remained secure and that surviving fleets were reinforced. Communications were maintained across multiple systems, and monitoring of the anomaly continued. Although the immediate threat had passed, vigilance remained essential. Humans had taught the Council that survival required constant observation, planning, and adaptability. Pride and assumption could not replace knowledge and preparation. By the end of this cycle, a new reality had emerged. Earth was no longer a minor voice in the Council. Humans had become essential, guiding the galaxy through a crisis that had threatened fleets, systems, and lives. Council leaders now listened carefully to Earth's advice, understanding that intelligence, patience, and preparation could prevent disaster in ways that brute force alone could not. The diplomat had shown that persistence, careful observation, and human ingenuity could save lives where others might have failed. The galaxy had witnessed the consequences of ignoring warnings, overestimating strength, and relying solely on confidence. But it had also witnessed the power of careful planning, observation, and adaptability. Humans had provided a model for survival, combining knowledge, persistence, and calm leadership in the face of an unknown force. The diplomats' work had turned potential annihilation into managed crisis, demonstrating that intelligence and preparation could make a difference even in the face of overwhelming power. As the stars twinkled silently above, the diplomat looked out at the galaxy, aware that the anomaly was still a force to be respected. Fleets were ready, systems fortified, and coordination maintained. Humanity's vigilance had created a path for survival, proving that careful observation and preparation were essential in the face of danger. The Council, once blinded by pride, now understood the value of humility, cooperation, and learning from those willing to persist in the face of doubt. In quiet moments, the diplomat reflected on the journey. Weeks of warnings, frustration, ignored messages, and finally, destruction had led to this point. The galaxy had survived, not through overconfidence, but through patience, persistence, and intelligence. Humans had demonstrated that even when others hesitate, careful planning and observation could change the outcome. The anomaly remained, but the lessons learned would guide fleets, systems, and civilizations for years to come. The Council finally recognized the full value of humanity's approach. Meetings that had once been filled with doubt were now focused on preparation, cooperation, and strategy. Fleet commanders relied on Earth's guidance, analysts trusted human calculations, and leaders acted with humility. Pride had been tempered by experience, and fear had been channeled into careful action. The galaxy had learned that survival depended not only on power, but on intelligence, patience, and persistence. By the end of this crisis, humans had become indispensable. Their steady guidance, careful observation, and clear instructions had saved countless lives. The diplomats' calm leadership had provided stability amid chaos. The anomaly had revealed the consequences of ignoring warnings, but it had also demonstrated the power of human ingenuity and persistence. Humanity's approach had turned potential disaster into manageable survival. The stars above were still distant and calm, but the galaxy had changed. Lessons had been learned, respect had been earned, and the value of preparation and observation had been proven. Humans had shown that even in the face of overwhelming unknown forces, intelligence, patience, and careful action could save.